Good evening and welcome to the Minions of the Zoo night stream, Sunday edition. Della was not able to be here this evening, so I agreed to pick up tonight. That's me, the Harry Channel. I know, deja vu all over again. It was a mere 24 hours since I was last hosting. But tonight is going to be a very different experience from last night. Instead of news articles and lively conversation, it's going to be a bunch of friends talking about books. And this is the third one we've done, so we've got some new blood with some new recommendations coming in. With us tonight, our guests, Inquisitor.
Hey, how's it going, everyone?
Blind Press.
Hello, everyone.
And let's see, I don't know if Skep has been on in one of the book streams, as I recall. Hi, Skep.
Hi, everybody. Hi.
And I think for Longevity Award, Serenity wins. I think you've been on the last two, right?
I vaguely remember, but they're so far spread out, and I do a few of these. I'm like, I don't know. Yes, we'll go with yes.
Well, I like to do like these kind of, when I pick up a night that's not normally a night I'd be hosting, just kind of do something like talk about books or movies or music or whatever. Because, the Saturday show is a lot like work. I kind of want this one to just be fun.
Yeah.
So before we delve into books, does anybody need to unburden themselves with non-book related things?
No, I'm here to forget about my freaking my stupid things that are going on. So.
Well, it is Easter, so I mean, presumably there was ham and stuff. I don't know.
No, we had ribs for dinner.
Good.
That's still pork.
Yeah, it was pork. It was pork, actually, and they were freaking amazing. Pincolo did the seasoning on them, and we did them in the oven, and they turned out really well. And it was very, very tasty. And we also the kids got to hunt for chocolate in their playroom this morning, and it was nice enough that we spent an hour at the park, and it was very awesome. So.
That is awesome. Well, okay. Well, I'm sort of curious because this could end up being a lot of science fiction and fantasy, since I think the last discussion we had was largely Serenity and Sora, and we talked about urban fantasy a lot. Yeah. I'm kind of curious, just kind of working our way around, what do you folks like in terms of genres for books before we get into the other part of the conversation? Maybe going clockwise from Quiz.
Oh, Quiz, go first, yeah.
Okay, are we talking just like, fiction books, or are we talking like just reading in general?
Well, other than reading for work, basically, which is a lot of what I regrettably do. I mean, it can be, history, it can be nonfiction, but as long as you're not basically getting paid to do it or it's part of your job, I figure it's fair play.
Gotcha. I read a lot, and not any one thing in particular. I do read a lot of, science fiction and fantasy, of course. I read a lot of Warhammer books. There's an entire publication arm of Games Workshop that is dedicated just to the fiction of Warhammer. But in lieu of that, I do have other things on my reading docket. Like currently, I have 3 Warhammer books. I'm also rereading The Crucible, the play. I'm rereading for, I think, the 4th time, Dracula. I read a lot of classic stuff. I read. I have several referential books that I like to pop open and reread every now and then, just to get sort of ideas about what to watch next. I have a lot of referential books about film noir that I've been reading as well. So
The Crucible is Arthur Miller, I think, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. A friend of mine, well, somebody who he's long passed, but he's a gentleman I used to know, was a descendant of John Steinbeck.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And
Nice.
as a boy, he was, a relative, I should say, not a direct descendant, but a close relative. And he used to go out in the woods and hang out with John Steinbeck and, on occasion, Arthur Miller. And a thing that they used to do was imagine 2 great writers writing dirty limericks over a campfire.
Nice.
I know a limerick that was written by Arthur Miller at that time that I cannot repeat. I cannot repeat it on this stream.
Oh, come on.
No. It is one of the foulest things I've ever heard. And it is such a beautiful. He was a cunning linguist. Let's just leave it at that. He was
Okay. Well, can you at least DM it to me? Because now I'm really curious.
I'm actually thinking one of these days, just sort of as an incentive, if I can ever get like 200 views on a video or something, it'll be the payoff for people. I'll just go, screw it, and I'll just tell that limerick. But yeah, I do know a limerick by Arthur Miller. We can talk about it later.
That's awesome.
And the weird thing was how much this guy looked like John Steinbeck. The Steinbeck genes are strong. That's all I have to say. So,
Russian genes.
BP, what do you like?
I really like. I guess I would also say that I like to read, fantasy and science fiction stuff. I grew up. My dad read me a lot of the Young Jedi Knight books. He read me ElfQuest comic books. He and I read The Lord of the Rings together because I got a copy of The Fellowship of the Ring in Braille. So he and I took turns going back and forth reading different parts. And he got me into Anne McCaffrey, like the Dragon Riders of Pern books. And I also really like reading good thriller and horror books, and like mystery type books. Your good old classic mysteries, I actually would like to. I have never actually gotten a chance to read any of the Arthur Conan Doyle stuff, but I would like to.
I have read through all of the original Strand publications.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a great read. It's a lot of fun. And of course, everybody has their little adaptations of it. And
Yeah.
I mean, I sort of enjoyed the TV adaptations up to a point. I think the Moffat one got a bit silly later on, and I just couldn't take it anymore. But that first season or two was pretty brilliant. And even Elementary wasn't bad, but you want to go back to the source material.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out what everybody likes before we just start talking about books and I get out of the way. Serenity, I think I know what you like, but can you give us a quick recap if there's anybody new listening?
Weird science, fantasy, whether it be high fantasy or low fantasy, high magic, low magic, don't care. Urban fantasy within reason. I like some horror stuff. I don't like it to be too long because then it gets into the thriller area of things, and I have a very bad tendency with thrillers to be able to guess the plot twist, and that takes all the fun out of it for me. Sora's here. Hi, Sora.
Hello.
And I read a lot of manga, manhwas. Yeah, that's basically stuff I read.
Cool. And Mr. Skep Tock, what are your areas of books that you like?
I actually like a lot of different books, fiction and nonfiction. Nonfiction, I like everything from, fairly technical books describing scientific process, like a lot of the stuff, history of science, history of industrialization, that kind of stuff. Enjoy biographies of almost any kind. Read a lot of biographies. Particularly like historical fiction pertaining to England, Wales, and Angevin, France. It's a section of France. It's kind of Western France. In the period from about 1300 to it stops being interesting to me about 1600, 1650. And so space technology, anything with space, any of that, anything having to do with astronauts of any variety. So that's the nonfiction side. Fiction, I like classics. I like Greek mythology. Like enjoy some of the light classic literature, particularly Dickens. I mean, I'm probably the only person on earth who read Bleak House for fun. And so I enjoy that sort of thing. I was going to say one of the authors I enjoyed, the thing about Angevin, France. Sharon K. Penniman wrote like 4,000-page novels about Angevin, France. So I've gone very deeply into that, and she wrote another 3,000-page novels about Welsh history, and so that's how I kind of got into that. So Sharon K. Penman, a recovering tax attorney who, with a writing habit, is a very interesting author. I sure enjoy her. Let's see. Other fiction that I enjoy, I really enjoy fantasy. I like sword and sorcery stuff, high-low magic, very, very much like Serenity. We have a lot in common there. She turned me on to the Robert Jordan stuff. I'm in book 9 of that. Reading Path of Daggers right now. And, of course, other fantasy. Blind Press turned me on to the Dragon Riders of Pern, and I've read 7 or 8 books in that series. Enjoyed that. Lord of the Rings, of course, the granddaddy of them all. I've spent a lot of time in the legendarium of that, and I've read probably seriously 40 or 50 books of either by Tolkien or pertaining to Tolkien and the legendarium. And then I have the entire Harvard classics. I have all the Harvard classics that were available in about 1970, and sometimes I just pull one down and start reading. So, I kind of like whatever I pick up, Harry.
Well, I have 2 things that I sort of prepared before this. One is I talked to a friend of mine who I cannot mention by name because he's sort of associated with the industry, and said, what would you consider to be like a dozen or so science fiction books that are really, really good but overlooked? And so I have that list, which I'll kind of sprinkle some of that stuff into the conversation. The other thing I have is there's a gentleman who was a big reader, and he got ill, and then sort of near the end of his life, he made a concerted effort to blow through, essentially sort of the top 100 or so books of the day. And he wrote one-line descriptions of every single book on that list, just for fun. And I have his description of Bleak House right here. Which is number 83 on the list. Dickens' law school attendance soars after book publication.
Oh my God!
It's
what a wit! What a wag!
I will put the link in the chat for everybody
amazing.
to enjoy, because I think this is such a good thing. Moby Dick, Melville, All Things Whale, Old Man in the Sea, Hemingway, not an intergenerational catch and release story.
Yeah.
Let's see. Great Gatsby, Fitzgerald, Money Doesn't Buy Happiness. There's some good stuff here. I love, now I've read a little bit of James. So The Bostonians by Henry James, Ambivalent Sexuality in a Sea of Commas and Semicolons. Anyway,
That's awesome.
let's say hi to Sora. Hi, Sora.
Hi, Sora.
Hello.
Sora.
Sorry,
Hey,
I was
Sora.
muted.
That's okay.
And
can you
still have-
refresh?
Yeah, you
everybody's
still have
memories?
setting up on the screen here.
Oh, gosh darn it. You guys have one job to tell me not to do that.
I was just about.
Okay. So, can you refresh everybody's memory about sort of what kinds of books you like before we just sort of go into the free-for-all conversation?
So I definitely like things that are fantasy, fairy tale like, and very light sci-fi. I say light sci-fi because I'm not a big fan of too hard stuff. For example, I would consider things like Star Wars to be very light sci-fi because really it's a lot more fantasy and
Yeah.
swashbuckling than anything. So that would be what I like. And because we also mentioned nonfiction, I love reading sort of cold case type recounts of crimes, as well as books on crime scene investigations. Those are very, very interesting to me.
Like true crime?
True crime stuff, yeah.
Okay.
Also, there's this one author that I read a couple of things. I don't know her name, but she wrote a couple of really fun, so very, very easy reading books, but on all sorts of things. So she did one, I think it's called like Corpse or something like that. Basically talking about how, like, what happens to the body as it decomposes.
Real
But
life
it's
reading.
written, it's really written for the layperson. So it's not, while it has science, it's for mass consumption. So it's more
I love that book.
palatable. I think it's called Corpse. Is it? Or hold on. I will look it up and I will correct myself in a bit. But yeah, that's the kind of things. And then I also really love, even though they're not books to necessarily make you think, but I still love what nowadays is called
Stiff.
Stiff. That's the one. Yes, Stiff. Thank you.
Giggity.
She wrote a couple of other books on the same idea where you take a subject and she writes a shortish book about it that kind of condenses it and makes it easy to ingest, I guess.
Yeah. Mary Roach is her name, by the way.
I know some people have said that she doesn't go deep enough or doesn't explain enough, but I think it's the kind of book that it's not, if you really wanted to go more in depth, you'd read something a little bit more science-based, or actually based in the science, like a more scholarly work,
More
I guess.
Yeah.
More technical, thank you, yeah. She's fun.
She's meant to whet the appetite, not give you the full meal. That's what basically it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Very breezy style, too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think Alton Brown's talked about her in the past, I feel like.
Well, she's relatively famous. I mean, I know her name, but for a different book. It used to be the case, I guess, during the 60s and the 70s, and that people would have conversations about books. You could turn on the TV and there would be people talking about, things like A Clockwork Orange and what does it mean, and just having conversations about books and literature. Even The Daily Show, when Jon Stewart was on, he would have authors on and they'd have semi-intelligent conversations about books.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like it's just, a lot of this just doesn't really happen anymore. It's just become a really superficial internet thing, listicle kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where people don't really talk about ideas and books and stuff. Not to make it heavy, but I like those sorts of conversations, and I look at some of that stuff from some of that earlier stuff and think I really should go back and read a lot of this, but there's only so much time, that I get before I'm dead, and so I have to pick and choose which things I'm going to get into. I consciously avoid historical fiction because my brain is really good at absorbing random stuff, and I don't want the not true stuff and the true stuff anywhere near each other in the brain cells. Because I will start just going, oh yeah, Forrest Gump was a real thing. I don't want to. I don't want to.
There really was a retard in the
I'm
Yeah,
fine
because
with
that's
this.
what I'll do.
Speaking of the Daily Show and them having authors on, I remember one. Oh God, it was back when Jon Stewart was still the host, and they had an author on. I can't remember her name now. Crap. Let me see if I can find it real quick. But the book was called Book of Mormon Girl, and it was about a woman who essentially was sort of excommunicated from the Mormon Church. And here we go. Hold on. Joanna Brooks was the author, and it was mainly because she was like she had fundamental sort of differences in her way of life. She, like, it wasn't the fact that she was like a lesbian or anything like that, but she was married, and I think she was divorced and remarried, which is one thing that the LDS Church doesn't really like. But one thing that a lot of people may or may not know about me is that I was actually raised Mormon. So that whole conversation they had on the Daily Show really kind of piqued my interest, and because of that, I went and got her book and read it.
Well, there
So-
you go. That's the important thing about having conversations about books. That
Mhm. And it's a very good book too. I very highly recommend it. For it's the full title is The Book of Mormon Girl: A Memoir of an American Faith.
They used to have a lot of great guests on. Of course, for fiction history, they had Doris Kearns Goodwin. And, for fun, he'd have people on like Sarah Vowell, who's just kind of a hoot and a half. Assassination Vacation, where she goes around and travels to the sites of where various presidential assassinations and attempted ones took place. She's
fun.
very funny and very sharp. He would have a lot of authors on. I think he may have had Walter Isaacson on a few times, who's the biographer of Franklin, the more recent biographer of Franklin, and a few other things. But but we don't really have those conversations of, back in the Dick Cavett days and the Donahue days, back when that kind of TV was on, you used to have a lot of stuff. Now it's just, tell us about your new sex tape. Oh, that's exciting.
Or try to make it look like you haven't had plastic surgery within an inch of your life. Whee!
Anyway, keep talking. People have heard me already talk about this for 4 hours. Go on.
Well, I before we started, went live, I said I have 2 series of books and a book that made me hate Stephen King. But the first series of books that I kind of wanted to delve more into was the Pern books, because they're a really good balance of science fiction and fantasy, and they balance, and it's like biological science and astronomical type science, and basically for those of you who haven't read the Dragon Riders of Pern books, Pern was a planet colonized by people from Earth, and First Centauri is the other planet that is part of this effort. And their whole point of settling Pern was to colonize a planet and have a more agricultural based colony rather than a technology based lifestyle. They were trying to get back to kind of like no combustion engines, no, like, nothing like that, right?
Space Amish.
Basically Space Amish, yeah. And they end up settling on a planet that, unbeknownst to them, has a wandering planet that their sun has attracted, that every 200 years drops these deadly spore-like life forms that they call threads on Pern, and these threads devour anything organic. So, like, trees, grass, crops, people, animals, and they also multiply when they enter the soil. So they can basically render the planet barren for a few, like, decades, and then when the planet moves out of orbit with Pern, things start to grow back, and it's like a cycle. So they end up developing a life form that's already indigenous to Pern. These little tiny creatures that kind of resemble dragons, and they genetically engineer them to be larger so that they can be ridden, and they basically have this telepathic connection with their rider, and they establish this whole social political system on Pern where the dragon riders are there to protect Pern from the threads, because their beasts, when they chew a specific type of stone, can breathe fire, and fire can destroy thread. So the dragon riders are there to protect Pern, and the rest of the people are there to work the land and tithe to the dragon men and women, because they live in extinct types of volcanoes. That's where they live. They literally live in extinct volcanoes, so they can't farm or anything like that. They develop, like, Anne McCaffrey does an incredible job of world building.
Oh my god.
In these books, like, an incredible job of, and she writes them out of order, basically. The first book she wrote was called Dragonflight, and it basically establishes the story, and it is just goes from there. Like, Pern is supposed to have 6 of these dragon habitations, and when Dragonflight begins, there's only 1 left, and threads have not dropped for 400 years instead of 200, so everyone thinks threads are gone. They're not coming back, and the dragon men are parasites on Pern, and they just need to go away. There's no point in tithing to them anymore. And it's all about basically 2 dragon riders trying to convince the rest of the planet that no, Thread is in fact coming back. And it just builds from there. You've got the Dragon Riders trilogy. You've got the Harper Hall of Pern trilogy, where you learn about the Harpers, which are basically the disseminators of information on that planet. They teach everybody everything via ballad and song. Like, that's how their education system works.
Oral history sort of thing?
Oral history. And they do have recorded history as well. It's up to the Harpers to archive everything and keep accurate records of what's going on, but it's mostly oral history is how things are taught. And it took me, because Skep was like, I only like dragons like Smog. Right? I only like dragons and I'm like, no, trust me, you'll like these dragons.
Very likable dragons.
They are awesome dragons.
They really are. They have personalities.
They
I'm sorry,
do.
I don't mean to talk over you.
No, you're right. They have distinct personality. And they kind of have, their writer and them kind of share similar characteristics. That's a common phrase in the Pern books, is like writer, like dragon.
Yeah.
It's just a fantastic series of books, with incredible world building that I highly recommend. So that's my Anne McCaffrey
Well, I second your recommendation.
Yeah.
That's one of the best recommendations that's been made to me in years.
Well, and it's light, like it's and it's not all light. Like she gets pretty heavy. Like there's some pretty sad parts in that in those books. Like
Nobody's survival is guaranteed.
nope.
Major characters, just I'm not going to spoil anything, but shit happens.
Well, I have one friend who stopped reading Anne McCaffrey because of that.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, no, I'm emotionally invested. I don't want to do this anymore. It's like, stop pissing me off, Anne McCaffrey. That doesn't sound like the most efficient way to fight an alien threat. I'm just saying. Breeding dragons and then feeding them rocks so they can breathe fire to destroy threats.
You know what?
It does not seem optimal.
You would think that, right, Skep?
And when Blind Press described it to me that way, when she was selling me on this, and I was going, yeah, okay, rock-eating dragons fighting thread being dropped from space by a planet. I'm gonna love this book. Not. And the thing of it is, Anne McCaffrey is so skilled. When Blind Press was saying she's a world builder, she really is a good world builder, and she gets you believing you're bought in, and she's real careful about the asks for suspension of disbelief. She's cagey about it. She's insidious, and pretty soon you're fully bought in. Of course they eat rocks. Of course it makes them, barf fire. Because she's so good at describing it and putting you in the scene. It really, I was so impressed with just her ability to write the reader into the scene that. I would recommend them to people who like that sort of, sword and sorcery type of stuff.
Yeah, it's really, really
very rugged individualist type characters. Man,
yes.
for a society that lives together, these are a bunch of really rough individuals, and it's kind of wonderful. And the other thing is, if you like strong female characters, you will enjoy this. It is just ripped full of very strong female characters, which I enjoy too.
Lessa is my
favorite.
A lot of authors cannot write strong female characters. David Brin tried. And, oh, God, it's such an epic failure. David Brin cannot write a female character to save his life.
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise, a pretty interesting writer, in terms of the Uplift trilogy and the 3 books that came after it.
He's good and bad, I think. But
he is good and bad. He's got a lot of great ideas, but he doesn't always execute them particularly well.
Exactly.
Like, for instance, the practice effect is a very interesting concept, but it doesn't necessarily make for the best book.
Well, it's one of those things that there's. I think it started on Reddit and then it ran to Tumblr where it was like, male writers can't write female characters, and I'm like, well, female writers can't write male characters. So it depends on the writer. There's some who can cross that gender line, if you want to call it that, and write the opposite sex beautifully and very well. I actually think Jim Butcher does it very well.
Yeah, some can, some can't.
That's a good example, Serenity. I agree with you.
Now, and it's one of those things that I like strong female characters, but they have, and it's like the same way with the strong male characters. They have to be written where they have a strength, but they're still human, and a lot of them don't understand that. Like a lot of writers, specifically writers a lot of them who've come out in the last, I want to say 5 to 10 years, maybe a little bit longer than that, but I've seen it for the last 5 to 10. Don't understand that to have strength, you have to have weakness. If you just have nothing but strength, you're a Gary Stu or a Mary Sue, and they're not worth it because there's no investment. There's no hurdle to jump. There's nothing. So it's kind of depressing sometimes to go through books and just sit there and go, "Oh my god, you're an idiot!" It just
Well,
That's
That-
what
I have a
like
question
about-
along
oh,
those
sorry.
lines, and BP, you'll like this. So, what do you folks think of Conan Doyle's treatment of women?
I mean, he doesn't bother me because I've read his stuff since I was very young.
You also have to look at what time he's writing in.
Well, you don't think you need to make apologies for him because
No,
Irene
no,
Adler
it's-
would be the big one to look at, right? And
Yeah.
in a sense, it's basically Holmes with a sex change.
Mm-hmm.
But there's way more to it than that because he understands that it's not just Holmes with a sex change. And the other characters, a lot of the characters are just sort of supporting male or female, right? But I think he did a really good job, certainly for a writer of his day.
Oh
in
yeah,
terms of writing both male and female characters.
What do you think about Dickens's portrayal of women?
Well, better question for Skep.
Dickens treats women in two ways. If they're like Estella or Miss Havisham, they have a role in the plot and they're much more full featured.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, they're mannequins.
Yeah.
They just, they eat cake, strawberries, and custard, and sit quietly by the window until they do whatever the plot requires them to do, and then they go back to eating cake by the window.
Yeah.
So that to me is, and I would offer, specifically Great Expectations, my favorite Dickens book, and but also David Copperfield.
Yes, I was gonna say David
Same thing.
Copperfield. You look
Yeah.
at
Mhm.
you look at Dora,
Dora, right? Yeah.
and then you look at Agnes and Betsy Trotwood.
That's what I'm talking about. Anyway,
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, like, I get very aggravated when people. Hypocrisy aggravates everybody if you have a brain in your skull or at least are honest.
Yeah.
I get mad at these kind of forums and stuff like that where they're like, where they do the whole men can't write women thing, and it's like, it goes both ways. Don't be hypocrites, because
Well,
there's
sometimes women can't even write.
there's a
women.
lot of women who can't write men. Holy shit.
Well,
like,
I'm
it's a
saying
lot
women
worse than the
can't even
women's.
write women.
Women, yeah,
sometimes.
women
yeah,
can't
they just
write
can't
women.
write. Period.
Like,
There's a lot of authors who write not only women decently, but children
yeah, that's the
really
other thing.
well, like
Mhm.
girl children even. Like Philip Pullman, for me, I think wrote female characters very well.
Yeah. Like,
Well-
in the Golden Compass series, yeah, like,
A Golden Compass, and his little novellas for younger readers as well,
Mhm.
like I think it's like the Fireworks Daughter,
yeah.
Firework Maker's Daughter. That's very good. Yeah, he really knows how to write. Garth Nix writes women very well. He takes someone who's like a say mid to older teenager and transitions them into an adult over a series of a couple of books really well, and you totally buy their progression as well. But yeah,
Yeah.
I hate when people say guys can't write women. If
Yeah.
you're a good author, you can write. Period.
I wonder where that comes from too, because it's all the people that seem to do that come with a political agenda to say that women are disadvantaged just on the outset. So when you have something like, going back to someone like Shakespeare, do you mean to tell me that Lady Macbeth was a badly written character? Really?
Well, it's interesting because you can usually tell the ones who've never actually read
Yeah.
these books that they're bitching about,
Yeah.
because, like, there's a whole thing on Reddit about people, and I'm not saying George R.R. Martin is God's gift to writing. I'm not.
He's
But
not.
yeah, but
He's a word star.
well, the thing is like, there's much worse writers out there, and I still love the Game of Thrones series, but they picked on one section where it was, I think it was Sansa. She was starting to mature into a womanhood, and she was becoming aware of her body, and they took that one section completely out of context and bitched about it. It's like, I never pay attention to my boobs. It's like,
Bullshit.
one, you're full of shit. Two, it's like, that's not the point of the scene. Because I actually got in a fight with someone in person about that, because I was like, that's not what it is. It's Sansa realizing for the first time what she possibly has to fight the Lannisters and Littlefinger and all the rest of them. That's what she's starting to come to the realization of.
Yeah.
That yes, being female can be a detriment, but it can also be a good thing, especially in a world where they automatically assume that you're weaker than they are. And that's the point of that scene. And you can't take that one paragraph and take it out. And that's what a lot of them do. Like, there's been a couple cases where the female character was intentionally drawn and written like crap, because it was either the person's first writing or it was them making fun of something. But these people will pull these paragraphs and then put them up there and say, see, this writer thinks this way of all women. And it's like, it happens a lot with, and I'm not going to go completely heavy, but I'm going to go a little heavy. A lot of people kind of start going after Stephen King because they're like, well, he writes about rapists a lot. And I was like, yes, because he considers rapists the dregs of society. That's the reason why they're usually the villain. Like, just because a writer writes something doesn't mean they agree with it, especially when it's the villain. But they want to look for something because they can't, like, I don't know what the reason why, but it's like people do that, and it's kind of like, you're not doing it because you actually care about the writing. You're doing it because you want to seem like you're superior to other people.
God forbid the villain be villainous.
I know. Like, I actually, like, there was actually, it's a booktuber on YouTube who reviews books and stuff like that. And I like most of his stuff. But then he started talking about the fact that in this one book, and it was also made into a movie, the bad guy was a rapist. Thus, the author has no problem with rape. Or no, it was part of rape culture. And I was like, no, the bad guy's a rapist because he thinks rape is a bad thing.
Because it's bad, yeah.
Yeah, if your protagonist was a rapist, then we'd have an issue.
Yeah.
You know,
but it's just, I think there's a lot of people who, and it's not just critical thinking. I think they're so desperate to be pissed at something, because we have it really good in this world, in this neck of the woods, everything compared. There's some bad shit out there, but we have it pretty good. And I think they're just so desperate to be mad at something that they'll just pick on anything stupid.
See, and it's funny you mentioned Stephen King, because I really liked Pet Sematary. I really liked The Shining.
Oh yeah.
I really liked, I think I read part of the Dark Tower series as well. I can't remember. It was one of the series that I read, and I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
So I got it.
Oh yeah. No, yeah, that one, if you don't know the part to skip, I don't want to fuck with you.
And I will never read another Stephen King book again. I just can't.
And so here's my hot take about Stephen King. All right, I don't like his writing.
Yeah,
I don't. He's a really good short story.
Oh yeah, his short stories are damn good. Yeah.
One of my favorites is Survivor Type.
Survivor Type's good.
Yeah, it's the one about the doctor that gets like stranded on a beach and has to try and survive, and the only thing he has is his surgical implements and like 20 pounds of cocaine.
Did he bring his autoclave?
Yeah, I was about to say, I feel like Harry's prepared for that. I feel like
I'm curious. So when you're done with this, we got a recommendation from BP, but you haven't told us what we should be reading yet. As new blood, we want to hear what you think.
Yeah, that'd be you, Quiz.
Oh well, I recommend a lot of really good science fiction. It really does depend on taste. I could sit here and recommend a whole bunch of Warhammer books, but you have to kind of be interested in Warhammer to really get into that. But in the non-Warhammer stuff that I could recommend is the Elric of Melnibone series by Michael Moorcock. hands down one of the best dark fantasies.
A lot of
ever
adjectives in
put out.
Moorcock.
Yeah, very much, yes.
His descriptions of things are adjective rich.
Yes.
He's
But,
very old school, it sounds like.
Well, yeah, well, he was a contemporary with Conan the Barbarian.
Oh, that'll
Yeah.
do it. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, that makes sense.
So he's like very, very low fantasy, but it's very dark and gothic, which is one of the reasons why I really preferred that one over something like, say, Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah.
Let me think here. Some other stuff. I always recommend Dracula. Dracula is hands down one of the best classic literature novels of all time, in my opinion. But
I should actually read it.
you've never actually read Dracula?
I've never read the book.
Oh, you should.
I've seen the Bela Lugosi movie. I've seen the what's the other really famous?
The one with George
Dracula
Hamilton?
movie? Probably.
The only
There-
vampire with a tan.
There's been no
Really?
Yeah.
there's been no adaptation of Dracula that's 100% accurate to the novel.
Yeah.
The closest one is probably the Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula.
It's
I
also
think I've seen that
very
one.
romantic, and I love that movie so much.
Mhm.
Bram
Yeah,
Stoker's
that's-
Dracula. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I've seen that one.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
it's
sure I've seen
it's a
that
little bit more romanticized than the book is.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's-
A lot
it's-
more-
It
God.
ends differently than the book too.
Oh yeah.
It ends very different than the book, but
But yeah, no.
So I'm looking at my my insider friends list of sci-fi, and I had actually not heard of many of these authors, let alone these book titles. Let's see, Life After Life by Kate Atkinson, time travel / parallel universe sci-fi, published as mainstream, so it did not get genre attention. Brilliant and probably the best sci-fi novel of its year. I believe it was 2001.
I'm very
Anybody
judgmental
heard of this one?
No, I'm very
No.
judgmental on time travel.
I'm sorry. What's the title again?
Life After Life by
Life
Kate
After Life.
Atkinson.
Thank you.
yeah, I've never heard of that one.
Well, I
that
asked
sounds
for
like
obscure
a-
stuff.
Yeah.
Soap opera.
So
Amazon
there's also
thing.
Use of Weapons by Ian M. Banks, a particularly dark but a brilliant culture novel. Definitely well appreciated in the UK, but Banks's profile was always much lower in the US.
Yeah,
Just to
that's-
throw a
that's
couple out there.
Interesting.
What was the other one again, Harry? The second one?
The first one or the second one?
Second.
Use of Weapons by Ian M. Banks.
I'm grabbing the Amazon links. This way if people want to look at them.
Has anyone ever read any of Critical Drinker's books?
No.
So, does anyone know who Critical Drinker is?
Yes.
No, ma'am.
The YouTube
Yes.
guy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So he writes like espionage and spy books.
That makes sense.
And Pincalo downloaded, I think it's the first one. And I actually have to read it from the beginning, but I got really mad at him because he came to bed with it on, and it was like in chapter 3 or 4 or something like that, and he fell asleep, and I was like, damn it, now I can't sleep because I'm interested in this book. But the first, I think it's called Redemption, and it's by his actual name is Will it's by Will Jordan, and it's actually a pretty good book. I need to read the whole thing, but from what I've listened to, it's pretty interesting. And he follows it. This whole series is about a guy named William Drake, I believe, is
Ryan Drake.
or Ryan Drake. That's right. But this series is about this guy named this Drake guy.
That one from the links.
I've never gotten into intrigue espionage books. Like I feel sometimes they start too slow, and I don't know if I just don't have the capacity to pay attention until the intrigue starts.
You did all that research on the Suez Canal story. I know you have the attention span.
But that actually interests her.
That was fun, she said.
I think the only
I tried Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy so hard because I want to be that person who reads the book first. I was going to say see the book first, but anyway, that, and I just couldn't get past the first couple sections of the first chapter or something. So I'm like, I'm not even going to bother with the movie.
I think the last espionage sort of book that I read was the Splinter Cell book by David Michaels. It's based on the video game, but it has nothing to do with any of the plots for any of the video games. The only thing that's in reference to the video game is the fact that Sam Fisher is the main character.
Yeah,
but it was actually really good. But it was less espionage and more military action.
Yeah.
So
was another what's her name? Agatha Christie. She wrote one, I think it's called Passport to Frankfurt. That's actually pretty good. And it's a spy novel. Yeah. Where basically, spoiler alert, someone who is seen as, because of something that happened, is basically suicidal. So she gets brought into this group to go spy on some kidnapped, I think, scientists. And they're like, basically, hey, since you're suicidal, why don't you just help us and try to get our scientists back? You might die, so you should be happy about it. And it's actually a kind of a romance. So it's very light on the espionage and intrigue, but that's about the level I can get with these kind of genre books. I do recommend it though, because it's still her level of writing, so it's fun. But yeah, I just like the concept. Hey, I see you're gonna try to take pills until you don't wake up anymore. How about instead of doing that, you kill yourself by going undercover as a scientist's wife and foiling an international conspiracy?
Happens every
Covers
day.
both things. It saves both.
You might die.
Oh, well, but you'll be doing it for your country.
Rule Britannia. Britannia rules the waves.
And maybe if you're lucky, you'll get some hot tail before it ends.
The only thing it shows my mind state here. The only thing that came to mind for me was Grease 2. Let's do it for our country.
Jeez.
If you like,
I think I've seen that once.
if you don't like books that take too long if you want a short intro that keeps you going, the thriller books that I like, it's mystery thriller, so it's not it's a detective thriller story. It's co-authored, and it's very seldom that co-authored books are actually good. I find co-authored books, I don't really like most of them. I like books that are usually written just by one person. But Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child do fantastic
hands down
job.
I love their series. I'm with you.
Yeah, Agent Pendergast is my
I love
favorite.
him. Oh, I love him so much. I love him so much.
Yes.
And I got into them because I genuinely love the movie Relic. I think it is such a well done film. I really enjoy it.
See, I read the book first and then I watched the movie and I was
it's very different. It's very different.
Really mad.
I read Relic and Reliquary back to back after about, I would say, 6 years after seeing the movie for the first time, because I didn't realize it was a book.
Yeah.
And I really liked it, but it's so different. It's like it's a different entity altogether. But I really enjoyed the movie.
I was when I saw that there was a movie, I was like, oh, I get to see Agent Pendergast on screen.
No, you don't.
Pissed.
No, you don't.
I'm like, I get to. I'm like, oh, the New York Museum of Natural History. Nope, Chicago. What the fuck? I
do mad. Like the actress Penelope Ann Miller.
What's
I really
wrong with
like
Chicago, huh?
It's not New York.
Chicago, but it's not the setting of Relic.
Bullshit. That's what it is. It's bullshit. That's what it is.
No, but the Agent Pendergast series, they've built them up to like I think they're at 20 books now,
Yeah.
and all of them are.
Yep.
I haven't
20
read.
books.
I haven't read one that sucks.
And the thing is that at this point with such a big series, a lot of people who think, oh, they're another, what's his name? The guy who spits out all the books.
You're going to
Oh.
be slightly more specific than that.
The
He's so,
Chuck Tingle?
he does all the like murder books. Like along came
Patterson?
Patterson. Him.
Yep.
So because Patterson has a lot of books that he quote unquote co-authors that they're always on the New York Times bestseller. And the thing is, they are beach reads, fluff, nothing to them. And you think at this point that's what those books are. No, they're fun. They're very interesting. They're different. There's something different about each and every one of them.
And they always have, like, the great thing about these books is they're fiction, but every book has a root in some sort of history or like a historical something or other, or a like a scientific something or other. Like there's always a root in reality that keeps the book centered on, like, there's never, like, even like all of the crazy shit that Pendergast does, like, they have reasons for why and how he can accomplish it. It's not just like amazing Agent Pendergast. You know, like,
Surprise.
yeah.
Another detective sort of like him that I really, really love are Lincoln Rhyme. So the Jeffrey Deaver books. With he's a former detective. He is paralyzed at the beginning of the series. All he can move is, I think, from the neck up.
Oh, the Bone Collector. That's
the Bone Collector. Yeah.
Okay, I know what this is.
So they made a movie out of it, which is completely, none of it is like the book that it's based on. But it's a decent book. It's a decent film. But again, just like Relic has completely changed, and Angelina Jolie plays the character, like the female character in the books, and they kind of screwed up her character completely in the movie. But yeah, he's one of those things where they have a lot of very interesting basis for all the books, and how he uses his mind, right? Because he's stuck. He can't go on in crime scenes. He can't do anything just because all he can move is one finger and hit from the neck up. For the most part, because I think I never finished the series. There was a lot of books in that series. Funnily enough, I want this opinion. Here's a question. So I spoke about the Jeffrey Deaver novels in high school in grade 12, and to my English teacher, and she actually told me that she was surprised. She thought I would have better taste in books than reading something like that, and basically said I'm not allowed to do any projects on those because all that is checkout fodder. And I got really offended. That I remember that being quite offensive.
I had teachers that said shit like that to me. Like,
and I'm like, it is a very interesting book, and it's like, even if you say, okay, well, it's suspect on the detective or the crime aspect of it. That's the whole point of a book report. You're supposed to go beyond the book to create something. But yeah, so I just was like, well, shouldn't you be happy that your freaking teenagers are reading beyond what's on the curriculum?
No,
not if it's trash like that, though.
That's the thing. There are
Apparently.
so many snobby English teachers, especially when you get into like the grade 12 area, because those are the teachers that couldn't hack it in university, teaching in university. So they had to fucking go and teach grade 12 instead.
They're all blind press out here, just calling out all English teachers. What now, English teachers?
I've had several very judgmental English teachers. I can count on one hand the amount of good English teachers I've had.
I've had just judgmental teachers, just period.
Yeah. But I had an English teacher who thought it would be a great idea to spend 4 months on Macbeth.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Fuck that.
Macbeth is good, but it's not that good.
No,
Come on.
it's not. It's really not. It's
Only 4 months.
it was freaking ridiculous, and it was like she made us go. It took us. She stretched out the reading of the play for 1.5 months, and then it was 3 months of analysis. It was
Wow.
like, ugh.
My teacher was just like, we're going to watch the play. We're going to read a little bit of it, certain parts. We're going to talk about it, and we're done. So it was like over in like 2 weeks.
But I'm sorry, go ahead, Quiz.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think I read that in my sophomore year. So we also had Huckleberry Finn to get through. So we didn't spend too long on
That's
Macbeth.
much better than Macbeth.
We had
Yeah.
Slaughter.
Huckleberry?
Huckleberry Finn is great.
Yeah, that's a great movie. I love that. Or great book. Sorry.
Great book.
Oh,
Both, yeah.
I mean, y'all are lucky. We had Animal Farm, 1984, Macbeth, and Slaughterhouse 5.
I did
Slaughterhouse
Slaughterhouse 5 in
Slaughterhouse
university.
5 is great.
Oh,
I
I
did
hate
so-
that book. I will burn it. I will burn it. I morally oppose burning books.
Okay,
But like metaphorically burn it.
Before we get down the rage rabbit hole, Skep, what were you trying to say?
Oh no, we've moved on. Just go ahead.
I
was
got
gonna
a
say-
recommendation from chat.
Oh yeah.
Mr. Yes told me about Three Little Snowmen Damned of the 219th Book 1. And it's
What
like
the fuck?
What?
it
no
looks
idea what
like
that
it's there's a long description which I will not read all of, but it says, as the Cold War begins to heat up, the 2/19th U.S. Special Weapons Group finds itself in the middle of a total war scenario. That's the worst scenario, by the way.
Yeah.
One where the tools of defense are nuclear and chemical weaponry. But Ant and the rest of the Special Weapons Group are faced with another sinister threat because men are going missing and someone's building blood-spattered snowmen under the cloak of darkness. This sounds like it could be it could be pretty epic.
Could be epic or it could be schlocky. I don't know which one.
I don't know, but it's
right,
got
Timothy, what
21
else have you
ratings and
written?
4.5 stars. I put the link in the chat.
All right.
So at least 21 people think it's awesome.
But I literally threw because 1984 in Braille is in, I think, something like 3 volumes or something.
Yeah,
like
that's a fuck that.
And I read 1984 in grade 12, and I finished the book and threw the last volume across, like physically threw it across the classroom and went, "Are you serious? That's it?" Like, I was viscerally upset.
Yeah, no, I actually liked Animal Farm. Just because I thought it was interesting, but like 1984, I'm just like, she thought it was funny because that was the year most of her class was born, so she thought it was funny to do that to us.
So it's when I was born.
Yeah, so but it was one of those things where I'm just like, 1984 it wasn't depressing, it was just that thing of like, oh, that's fun. Animal Farm was weird, but it didn't depress me, it was just different, so I was like,
Oh, yeah.
all right, we'll go
Just
with
wanna
that.
Talk depressing. Talk the death of a salesman.
Death of
Oh
Salesman.
God, yeah, we did that in grade 12.
That was.
I didn't start smoking clove cigarettes and hanging out with the goth kids, but I did read a bunch of existentialist stuff, some Jean-Paul Sartre plays, a bunch of Camus, 1984, and Brave New World, all just like in a string, with not anything punctuating it. It was just all of that crap.
Oh God.
And I'm surprised that you didn't think 1984 was depressing, because I found it to be terribly depressing.
Oh, it was horribly
Oh
depressing.
yeah, no, it was depressing. That's why I didn't like it.
I was.
Oh, I thought you. Oh, okay.
And that's
No, I
why
liked Animal
was-
Farm.
That's why I was so angry about it at the end, because I was like, you gave up, you motherfucker.
Yeah, that's our whole class was pretty pissed off. We read it in grade 11, and everyone was like, what the hell? And then I think the teacher was expecting something else out of us, but we were all like, no, this is pathetic. We hate this. This is so terrible. And
My mom's least favorite scene in that book is the memory of the chocolate. Where Winston eats all the chocolate on his sister and makes her cry, and he's like happy about it.
I didn't have to read 1984 for school. We read, or I read that independent.
Right. I didn't read it for school either. I read all of this stuff independently.
Yeah.
I didn't really read much of anything for school, honestly, other than taking a class in college on Shakespeare. I haven't really done a whole lot of fiction reading for school at all. I think I read The Crucible, and I read some James and a few other things, but I think it might have something to do with the fact that I kind of stopped doing high school and moved to college early. So I skipped a lot of that stuff.
I read The Exorcist for a World Religions book review.
Yeah.
And
I read a biography of Einstein in 6th grade. That was interesting.
The Exorcist is a fantastic book. Puts the movie to shame.
Did they go
Who's the
into
author again?
Pazuzu?
The author of The Exorcist, William Peter Blatty.
Thank you.
And if you like listening to Audible books, get it on Audible because he narrates it.
I am Pazuzu.
No, that would be the second movie.
I know.
I like to pretend that never existed. My best friend and I did a horror movie I know we're not talking about movies, but my best friend and I did a horror movie marathon one weekend. We got The Exorcist, The Exorcist 2, and The Exorcist 3, and a whole shitload of candy. And we were literally walking up the walls from all the sugar we'd ingested, watching The Heretic, going, I'm Pazuzu, and like throwing candy at each other. Because it was just so ridiculous. That movie was just so fucking stupid.
I love that movie. It's so bad, it's great.
I just love a demon whatever thing named Pazuzu, because that is so not scary.
You can't be scared of anything.
I am Pazuzu. Stop laughing at me. I am evil. Stop laughing.
Hey, Pazzy, you like to be called Pazzy or Zuzu? Which one is
it? Zuzu. That's like a baby's term for like a pacifier,
right?
It's like, what's the in the Kevin Bacon? Oh no, Ethan Hawke horror series, the one with the tapes. What's his name? He also has a stupid name. They always have stupid names, these demons. I think it's Bilal. It's one of those names, one of those kind of...
Well, I think Bilal has a root in actual history, though. Mesopotamian religions.
Yeah, but
actually, so does Pazuzu, actually, I believe.
Does it?
Yeah.
The devil's pacifier.
Yeah. But I want to touch back on something that you brought up there, Blind. You didn't like Slaughterhouse-5?
I didn't read Slaughterhouse-5.
That was me.
Sora that said she
Okay.
I hated that book so much.
I love that book. It was so
annoying.
I love that book too.
So annoying. Oh God.
You're on my list.
Okay.
I love the whole juxtaposition going back and forth from like the perspective of a guy who's essentially living in a zoo amongst extraterrestrials, and then like straight up his memoirs from when he was in World War II in a concentration camp. I love that book so much.
I do too, for that exact reason, Quiz.
Yeah.
So we read that book in the class that I was taking it in. We read Slaughterhouse-5 and a play called Chernobyl, which I actually really, really liked. It was a very short, I think it's a one-act play, maybe. Or
it's a one-act story, too. I mean, you know, Fallout.
and then I can't remember. There was a third one, because we did 3. And for the life of me, I can't remember what the third fiction we read was. But I couldn't. It was difficult to get through it, and I don't know.
I really do like Kurt Vonnegut's stuff. He usually mixes a whole bunch of like really interesting high concept with his
Cat's
sci-fi.
Cradle.
The other one that I really liked too, Skep, was Welcome to the Monkey House.
Oh, Welcome to the Monkey House is one of my favorites.
Oh,
Absolutely.
it's such a good collection.
So insane. Yeah, I'm with you. Cat's Cradle is probably my favorite book by him, although I like the Sirens of Titan too. I like all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You must be joking. Dr. Kevorkian is actually pretty funny and a short read.
Hmm.
I haven't read a lot of Vonnegut, but I've read that. Don't all stop talking at once.
That killed the conversation. Nice going,
Thanks,
Harry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
clearly.
God, Harry, God.
I'm just the turd in the punch bowl tonight.
Aha! See, I just looked it up. In ancient Mesopotamian religions, Pazuzu was the king of the demons of the wind.
Oh.
Fart demon.
It's the onomatopoeia demon.
The breaking of the wind.
Oh God. Pazuzu.
Pazuzu.
I
If you
can't
have a
take that.
particularly farty dog, you could name it Pazuzu.
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of cute now. Makes it cute.
Yeah, okay.
Or Pazuzu, the demon who doesn't get any respect.
Yeah,
Gets
Jake
no
has definitely
respect.
been a Pazuzu here lately.
a little demon that couldn't. Yes.
Get no respect, I tell you. No
No
respect.
respect at all.
Oh, so I was going back through my friends' list again. Anybody read Babel 7 by Samuel R. Delaney?
No.
Babel 7. I think
Sounds
I did.
familiar.
I think I did read it a long time ago.
Yeah.
Because I've never read anything.
I
by
can't
Delaney.
remember it. I can't remember. I've got to look at it and see. I think I have read that, but I think I've forgotten it. Sometimes.
What's the name of the author again?
Samuel
Delaney,
R.
Sam Delaney.
Delany. Babel 17. If I search for the right thing, it makes it work way better.
No, I know why I remember it now, because it won the Nebula with Flowers for Algernon, and I was mad that anything but Flowers for Algernon won that year. So I have a resentment against this novel actually for it being good enough to win the Nebula or co-win the Nebula with Flowers for Algernon. So I haven't read it, but I do have a story with it. Sort of. Best I can do. Sorry.
I'm trying to find a good synopsis of it, and let's see if Goodreads has anything on it. Keep talking.
Well, during an interstellar war, one side develops a language. It's a 1966 science fiction novel by American writer Samuel R. Delaney, in which the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis that language influences thought and perception plays an important part. It was joint winner. Yeah, I know, and was nominated. Yeah. Okay, and so anyway, during an interstellar war, one side develops a language called Babel 17 that can be used as a weapon. Learning it turns one into an unwilling traitor as it alters perception and thought. The change is made more dangerous by the language's seductive enhancement of other abilities. This is discovered by the beautiful starship captain, linguist, poet, telepath, Mary Sue Wong. She is recruited by her government to discover how the enemy are infiltrating and sabotaging strategic sites. Initially, Babel 17 is thought to be a code used by enemy agents. Ryder realizes it is a language in and of itself, and furthermore, that she has a traitor on the ship. Dun, dun, dun! Ryder then later finds that she herself is becoming the traitor as she learns more about Babel 17. She is rescued, however, by her dedicated crew, who figure out the danger and neutralize its effects.
Is this like proto Among Us?
Kind of.
Super sus.
It's an interesting connection.
That actually, the whole idea of language having that kind of structure to it is very much tied in with certain kinds of postmodernism, and we're not going to talk about that tonight.
It's
But
like
just
the
if it sounds
joke
vaguely
from
familiar,
Monty
you'll know
Python's.
why.
Well, the language that's portrayed at the center of Babel 17 contains interesting linguistic features, including the absence of a pronoun or any other construction for I. The heroine finds her perceptions and even her physical abilities altered once she has learned Babel 17. And it says here that Delaney's novels influenced a number of writers. Native Tongue by Suzette Hayden Elgin, Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin, which I have read. And I don't know, maybe it's certainly with the language aspect. Embassy Town by China Meville and Luna Coda by Joshua Niles, and more evidently, the short Story of Your Life by Ted Chiang. So Language as a Weapon was adapted as a plot device in Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash, which I have read.
Snow Crash.
And I've actually met and had dinner with Neil Stephenson. It also resembles a few preceding science fiction novels which deal with how languages shape the political and cultural stratum of society, such as The Languages of Pow by Jack Vance or Anthem by Ayn Rand. So there you go.
I say I've not finished it yet, but it is definitely on my list to finish. I started Snow Crash. I like what I've read so far of it, though.
It's an interesting novel. I like the novel better than I like the movie. The movie was semi-faithful to the book. Semi.
I had no idea there was a movie.
Huh?
I had no idea there was a movie.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
There's a movie. I think it's on Netflix. Anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go on and on about that. I did it again, didn't I, Harry? I took it
No,
over.
you actually did what I wanted you to do perfectly. And even I enjoyed the jokes about Algernon. Speaking of depressing, Algernon might be one of the most depressing things I've ever read. And like I said, I've read Sartre. One of his short stories about a man thinking about his existence on the night before his execution.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the title of that, but that is probably the second most depressing thing I've ever read after Algernon. Yeah, because I've joked about Biden being on the Algernon juice a few times, but not to go into the politics too much. Now, in terms
You're
of
thinking
younger
of The
readers-
Wall.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Wall
God.
is by Sartre is the thing you're thinking
That
of.
would be the one, yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
In terms of younger readers, I know that I think last time we ended up making a reading list for Jenna's kids pretty much. Or am I hallucinating that?
That happened at one point, yeah.
Yeah, because I tend to be really bad at recommending things for kids because I'll go, oh, yeah, you should read the Chronicles of Amber. And then it's like, oh, Corwin did some things with his, no, maybe not so much for kids. I just don't really know what's age appropriate outside of the obvious stuff like Susan Cooper. And it seems that there used to be a lot of science fiction that was sort of aimed kind of at a young adult audience. Because I think stuff like... was it Schmidt, the Telsey Amberden books? Sort of, I'm a 15-year-old genius telepath, female. There used to be a lot of books like that.
Anything about like Andre Norton is pretty age appropriate.
My mother is obsessed with Andre Norton. It's her favorite author.
There you go.
Is there anything else that we should be recommending to get young people hooked on books?
The problem is that so many of them they refuse to acknowledge the fact, the modern ones do, that the people who are reading them are young because the people who are reading them don't want to acknowledge the fact that they're young. So they try too hard to go into that, to like dance that line between, because I think they call it new adult now, which is the 20 to 25 age of the main character. So they call that or college or whatever, but still.
Yeah, but all those books, all they is it's depressing.
Yeah.
They're all about the R word and sexual assault and everything being no one believe it's all victim blaming shit,
Yeah.
but don't worry, this one guy with his magic penis saves the day, and they're all like that, and it's depressing, and it's
Who found the memoirs?
Who's,
No,
who's
isn't
always
there going to
rich?
be a wise person of color who will come in and help the protagonist at some point?
No,
no, not yet.
no, it's
I
always
believe
they're
I
always
believe the term they used to use was the magical Negro, and that's just what
Yes.
they called
Magic
it. Don't
Negro.
blame me.
magical. But it's
Magic Negro,
it's always the guy's always rich, always ripped, always
Or like
tatted
a
up.
rock star, and
Yeah.
they have a very antagonistic relationship, but after a few times of him trying to force himself on her, for some reason suddenly they're in love, and that's
Yeah.
okay now, and this is all
Because she
so
wants it because
brave.
he's hot.
so brave, so daring. And I'm
No.
like, okay, and that's marketed that's the college age, which is now young adult.
Yeah.
So
Do you
18
remember
to
the movie
25.
Pretty Woman? The movie Pretty Woman. There was a comedian was talking about that. That people were saying, "Oh, it's just like a fairy tale with Julia Roberts." And she's like, "Oh yeah, that's the fairy tale. It starts out. Once upon a time, there was a hooker."
Yeah, prostitute. Yeah, right.
But it's one of those things like even why a young adult does that now, and you can't find like good in between books either because they're all trying to recreate Harry Potter.
Yeah.
The in
Oh,
between
that's
ones.
a formula for printing money, basically.
Yeah,
So,
and
you
it's
know,
like the Percy
Hunger
Jackson.
Games or that. Yeah, and who
What-
was the author for the Percy Jackson novels?
Oh God, I can't remember.
It was a
I gotta
dude.
look it
I
up.
can't remember which dude it was.
Rick Royden, Royden, something like that.
What? Arthur? Oh damn it! Fuck you, internet.
I was
God.
gonna say, you're talking about Hunger Games. I think you mean the real one. The
Battle Royale.
Yeah, written by who was it?
That was a good book.
Battle Royale.
I read that in high school.
Koshun Takami. Koshun Takami. I actually have that book sitting on my shelf right over there.
Well, I mean, Battle Royale is a good book, and it's depressing in the way it should be. That kind
Yeah,
of
but
thing.
it's depressing without being like slit my wrists,
I mean, the
and
Japanese.
then now depressing.
Most of the Japanese that kind of go down that path are pretty good about that. It's something the West has not figured out yet. Because I think, it was 42 ninth graders is what's in Battle Royale. So it isn't even, it's people who are like 13 and 14. Unlike the Hunger Games where it's like, oh, I don't know. Oh my goodness, who am I going to sleep with? Like, it's that kind of,
Ugh.
but,
The main character's name is Katniss, which is an adjective meaning of or pertaining to cat.
no, I'm going to stop myself. But the thing is, like,
Katniss Everdeen.
there was the Artemis Fowl books that
I
tried to
like
do that.
those.
Yeah,
I really
Artemis
like
Fowl.
those.
Artemis Fowl was pretty good because it did it a different way, and I appreciated it. Percy Jackson, it just no one will shut up about
I've never
Percy
read
Beth.
those books.
Percy Beth, like Percy, and I think her name's Annabeth, and how she's a badass. Like, it's another strong air quotes strong female.
Is that
Who's
the
like-
one that was played by Daddario in the movie?
I have no idea.
What's her name? The Russian actress, Alexandra Daddario. I haven't read the books. I've only seen the movie.
It was played. It's been played by two different people: Alexandra Daddario and then Alicia Newton.
Okay.
But like Artemis Fowl does it pretty well, and Artemis Fowl does it without getting into weird stuff like some of the other ones are. Maze Runner. Runner took a
idiot.
turn. Maze Runner took a weird ass turn. That just.
Wasn't that the story about in the Middle East?
No,
No.
Maze Runner was a post-apocalyptic Chicago.
Yep. Then there was.
I wanted to see the movie because it has Dylan O'Brien in it, and I never watched it.
Supposedly the movie's actually pretty good. It's better than the books, apparently.
Kite Runner is the book I'm thinking. of.
Yeah. I'll say Metaphorist here said the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett. Is that the one where Death has it's about the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and Death has
Well, one of the books might
One
be
of the
like
books.
that.
Yeah.
There
Like,
were
just-
23 or
Disco
Disc-
covers a lot of stuff.
oh,
Alright.
but still, like but Discworld is a good thing. I actually think that Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or Guide to the Universe can be a good one, maybe for ones that are a little bit more mature.
Yeah, I would say that Hitchhiker's is
honestly-
great if you can dissemble the prose, because he speaks a lot in metaphor.
Oh God, yes.
Dirk Gently, which is the series he never finished before he died,
Yeah.
I think it's superior.
Going Postal, the film adaptation of Going Postal is a lot of fun if you get a chance to see it.
It is.
It actually has Andre
Hogfather is
Sachs from Faulty Towers is in it.
Mm-hmm.
You may be going, that guy looks awfully familiar, but yeah, it's really good. It was Richard Coyle and Claire Foy, I believe. It's a great cast.
But
Sorry,
Hogfather
back
is
to books.
probably one of the best ones.
And say
The
you're talking about
Hogfather adaptation is mwah. The guy
It's
who
amazing.
plays Mr. Tiatame is so freaking I didn't imagine him that creepy in the book.
And it's,
It's
like, oh,
worth
shit.
watching. God, he shivers down. He's so freaking creepy.
But
You're
it, but go ahead.
talking about Dirk Gently. There was a TV show that expanded
two.
on. Yeah.
There's like two, but I haven't watched. I don't know. It's one of those things where I haven't seen them because it holds such a dear place in my heart. I don't know if I want to ruin it by.
I think one of the best, not YA novels, because YA and young adult are two different things, but about to go into the preteens, going into early teens. I think Lemony Snicket's actually probably really good.
Lemony Snicket is excellent. Yes, I
It
agree.
deals with heavy stuff, but it does it in a way where it's not.
The series
Depressing.
Unfortunate Events.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not depressing, but it also isn't going to fuck with your psyche.
If you want to give your kids books where basically everything that's good dies, literally Lemony Snicket, A Series of Unfortunate Events. It's just fantastic.
But
it really
still
is.
It still ends up good somehow. It's weird.
And I love the twins that are not twins but triplets, because the triplet brother died and they're always upset.
Oh yeah, no, that was
They're
it was a really good series. But there's not very many anymore.
I was gonna say, all I can think of for preteen, if your preteen likes scary stuff, is R.L. Stein's Fear Street.
Oh yeah,
R.L.
Fear
Stein
Street was great.
Yeah.
I love from the Fear Street series, the sub
The
series.
Ghosts of Fear Street.
No, the
That one?
babysitters one.
Oh
yeah.
Yeah. That was good too.
Those are good ones.
But I'm it's one of those things. At least with me, I was one of those kids who walked into the fantasy section way too early on. Because I read the first Game of Thrones book when I was 12 or 14, and that's not something you want to read when you're that age.
Yeah, I was reading. That's the other thing when people say, what do you recommend for my kid? I'm like, I was reading The Hobbit when I was 6.
Yeah.
So, you don't want to ask me, because by the time I was your kid's age, I was reading really heavy shit.
I was reading Lovecraft by the time I was 13.
I would say if you want to challenge your kids too, considering he was extremely, controversial. Well, not controversial, envelope pushing, edgy. Back when he was a contemporary Edgar Allan Poe. Because the language is going to be challenging for a kid, but
it's
still
challenging, but it's understandable.
Yeah,
You can parse it out what he's getting at. Because I remember that was how I got into Lovecraft, was Poe, and then from Poe it was Lovecraft, and then it was down the weird science rabbit hole where it's just oh my god, you people have problems. It was that moment.
Something you should never do when you are having a bout of insomnia, and having that bout of insomnia in a basement, is read Poe. Don't do that.
Especially not a cask of Amontillado.
I love Cask of Amontillado.
That one's good, yeah.
One of my favorite.
I had a friend knock on my bedroom window to say, "Hey, I'm here, coming over." When I was on the last freaking page of Turn of the Screw, that is just Jesus.
Did
To
you
say
scream
that
like a little girl?
I jumped out of my skin. It was,
But
it was
in all
insane.
seriousness, one of the other like good ones for like mid-teens, maybe mature preteens, and then older teens. I honestly think is like a lot of the Star Wars books.
Yeah.
Because they touch on stuff, but they don't go too dark. I personally like the X-Wing series, blah, 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 blah.
The Young Jedi Knight series is
Yeah, the Young Jedi Knight series is good. And any of the Legends books from Star Wars, they're usually maybe a dialogy. They're maybe 1 or 2 books. They usually don't go too far, but they will kind of feed into other books. But once again, they don't get too dark, but they do get dark. They deal with conflict, but it's not the overdone, let's draw it out for 30 pages when we don't need to do that shit. That kind of stuff. They're very well done. But yeah.
Well, you're not constrained to just young adult stuff. I was just asking that question because we do need a new generation of readers.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like there's little kid books and then YA. And that's it right now. Like, there's almost no, like, in between. Like, there's some, but there's not a lot.
So here's, I don't know if I would recommend these for kids, but, well, they're not bad or anything, but they're just a little bit harder to understand if you don't understand the history. But, and Sora, you may have heard of these, because they're originally in French, but they do have English translations. The Asterix comics.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Asterix is a gull. And not the bird, a gull, a Celt, yeah, I hate the Romans, I'm a gull.
Asterix and Obelix.
And Obelix, yeah. And they have many different adventures that are both... And the way that those comics are done are they're very kid-friendly, but they're also incredibly witty. Like, even if you're an adult, you can read them and go, okay, this is really funny.
Yeah.
And they're one of the Asterix and Obelix meet Cleopatra, I think it's called. They made that into a movie.
Favorite one.
They made that into a movie where Gerald Depardieu is Obelix, and I don't think they have it in. I don't know if maybe now they have it with English dub or subtitle.
I've never seen an Asterix movie in English. So.
Okay, so if you guys don't, because I can't, my French isn't great, but I can watch something that's for kids, in French without any subtitles or dubbing. I saw it on a plane many years ago. It is so funny because they managed to take the hijinks of the animation of the comic and translate it really well on the screen. Yeah. And it's live action, so it is live action. It's not like because they did Tintin and they made that CGI, which I actually really enjoyed the film. I know it didn't do well.
Tintin. I love Tintin. That was my one comic that I read in French growing up in Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
But Asterix has like, and it's, you can tell that it's written like with the intention of getting kids to read, but you can tell that an adult could pick it up and have a chuckle at it.
Mm-hmm.
Like
100%.
the druid's name is Get a Fix, for Christ's sake.
I say, I think you might be surprised there, Skep. Tintin was actually really popular in America too.
It's just I wasn't in America. It was the one thing that other than the books that I got to get once every 6 months when we would drive to France and actually go on a Air Force base or Army base, and I'd get to buy stuff at the PX. Mm-hmm. I had to survive on French, the stuff for little French-speaking Belgian boys. And the only one that I liked was Tintin, and I love Tintin. I read everything I could put my hands on.
Metaphorist is saying in chat here, A Wrinkle in Time, A Wind in the Door series. Yes, Madeleine L'Engle is a fantastic writer. And
do not watch the movie. Do not watch it.
What Disney did with that adaptation that came out a couple of years ago or whenever it was, I hate them with
Well,
the
I-
power of 1,000 universes. Okay,
I mostly blame the director and Reese Witherspoon for that because that was the
Ava
producers.
DuVernay fucked it up, and I hope
Yeah.
she never ever works in Hollywood again. I am happy every time she gets fired off a thing because she doesn't deserve money. She doesn't deserve projects. She doesn't deserve breath. Fuck her. I can't stand
Oh no,
Reese
it was
Witherspoon anymore because she was in that. Cannot
Yeah.
stand Mandy Kaling. I don't like her to begin with. I think she
Yeah,
ruins a lot
no.
of stuff.
she does.
Let's
But- and I'm
stop
sorry-
talking about that godforsaken movie, please.
Yeah.
Sorry,
No.
sorry.
It's just knowing it exists is almost like forcing me to reread 1984. While we're talking about
Isn't Mandy
Ursula Le
Kaling
Guin,
gonna
okay, why is it that people used to talk about the Lathe of Heaven a lot, and it seems like it has fallen off of people's radar? Have any of you read that? Is this at all familiar to you?
No.
Never heard of it.
No.
Good grief. Okay,
What
this
is
needs
this?
to be addressed.
What is it?
They've never
The-
read Ursula K. Le Guin.
I've seen the
Well,
mini
you've read A
series with
Wrinkle in
Kirsten
Time
Pruitt.
Things like that. So The Lathe
And-
of Heaven, there was an adaptation that was done on PBS in the 80s,
Oh,
which is
she-
actually decent.
She wrote Wizard of Earthsea.
Yeah, that
read
mini
that.
series.
I've read that.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting Le Guin and L'Engle mixed up in my head. I apologize. I'm stupid. Don't pay any attention to me. But anyway, The Lathe of Heaven is a really good book, and
Lathe of
it's totally
Heaven.
worth reading.
1980 movie.
So basically,
Well, it was
it's-
made into a 1980 movie. Let me rephrase that.
and it was, and actually that movie is actually pretty good as such
cool.
things go. So George Orr is your protagonist, a draftsman and addict, abuses drugs to prevent effective dreams that change reality. So essentially, he dreams things and then reshapes reality while he sleeps.
Oh,
That's basically the premise, but there's a lot that happens because of that, and I'm not going to ruin the story for anybody.
Just so everybody knows, if you have Kindle Unlimited, The Lathe of Heaven is free with Kindle Unlimited.
Good to know.
And
I
I
have that.
hear movement upstairs, so I need to head out and check on that. So
Okay.
But
Are you
it's
coming
been-
back, or are you leaving us?
I think I'm going to be leaving you because they'll probably want me to cuddle with them.
Makes sense.
Oh,
We got an hour and 36 minutes of your time, and I know we usually only get an hour, so I figured you must have been having a good time.
I was having an amazing time. Thank you for
Good.
having me on this stream. It was lots
Thanks
of
for
fun.
coming on. It's good to get some new blood.
New blood.
she's
Do you
tired
need
of us.
to do you need to
Yeah.
shill anything before you take off?
I was going to say, you may
I'm-
want to chill.
I'm not sure if there's going to be a coffee stream tomorrow because both kids will be home because it's Easter Monday. So, but keep an eye on Twitter and I'll put out an announcement.
Good. Well, thank you, and good night.
Thank you and good night. Thanks
Night,
for having
night.
me.
Good night, my
Vicky.
Good night.
Good night and good luck.
And thank you for all the fish.
Yes.
So long.
Well, that's so
Thanks for all
long.
the
But
fish.
yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, Le Guin, L'Engle, what do I know? It's all the same.
if you want to watch a terrible, well, it's not a terrible adaptation of Madeline L'Engle book, but it's just that it has the one from OC in it.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't like her because I feel she's a terrible actress. But A Ring of Endless
She was-
Light.
She was in the OC, so.
Yeah. A Ring of Endless Light is a very good book series, and they adapted it, quite okay. Like they did a decent job. It's just that the actors are really weirdly cast for that movie.
Can we agree that with L'Engle, just read the
Don't
book?
touch.
Just read
No,
the book.
no. I will say that there was a mini series that was made. I think it was a Canadian production, part of it, of A Wrinkle in Time, which was actually very good. Now
I think I remember that one.
they didn't. The original actress who played Kitty Pryde before they put Elliot Page in the last X-Men movie, she plays Meg, and I think was a very good. Yeah, that. Thank you, Mr. Yes. That's the one. I think that is a very good adaptation. They tried.
I think that is the one that used to play during the Wonderful World of Disney, which
Yes.
we had down here.
Mm-hmm.
Because I vaguely remember that one.
Well, I vaguely remember it too, and it was one of those things where I don't think you can lose much of the story and have it still hold up really well.
Yeah.
You want, I mean, like I said, I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't read it, but there are aspects of that story that I just think get lost in any film adaptation.
Well, and this thing is that, and it's something that if you're a fan of a book, you have to, if they announce an adaptation of the book, you have to sit there and go, okay, do I even want to give this a chance, or is the book just too ingrained with me to even go see the movie? Because if your first thought is if they get this and this wrong, it's going to depress me, don't even bother go see the movie because it ain't worth it.
Okay, hold on. Just real quickly. I think that it depends on the author, because a lot of authors write books that are more like screenplays. The problem with L'Engle is there's a lot of inner dialogue that goes on, and getting the inner dialogue out of the characters' heads onto the screen is pretty freaking impossible. It's a really hard thing to do well. Sorry, Skep, go on.
No, I was going to say more or less the same thing. No.
Oh, good. So I don't sound stupid then.
So, like, Peter Jackson was not perfect with Lord of the Rings, but the reason why Lord of the Rings worked was because of the fact that there's so much description that Tolkien puts into stuff when he decides he wants to describe. So that's the reason why that kind of works. But yeah, you're right. If there's a lot of inner dialogue, it's just like, it's real hard to cross that off on screen.
Hot take number 2 tonight. I think Peter Jackson's adaptation was better than the books.
I mean, and that's fair.
I'm just gonna come right out and say it. Yeah, I don't mind Tolkien. Okay, Tolkien is a good author, but his prose is so extremely dry, dry, and characters like Tom Bombadil. Yes, I'm glad he is not in that movie.
He's a hard character to pass off. Like, him and Goldenberry are going to be hard to get you to understand the full scope of what they are in the amount of time they would have been in the film.
Mm-hmm.
It just would have been too difficult, and it's just not worth it. Now, I'd still want to see Tom Bombadil? It would have been nice. Or you can just do it. Or you can do what Sora and I did, which is play the online version.
Yeah, and then you get to interact with him, and he's wonderful. And his wife is wonderful, and he's just lovely. I really like him.
Can I play part of the factions of Mordor so I can try to kill him?
No.
Damn it!
Yeah. But it's one of those things, like, you have to look at the book. If the book you're reading has a lot of inner monologue, a lot of stuff that goes on in the character's head, it's going to be hard to pass that off on screen. If it's a lot of description of the surrounding area and it's not in their head, it's the reason why I'm kind of terrified. Because right now, to come back to Dresden, because I have to come back to Dresden Files. Right now, Jim Butcher has a deal with a production company to possibly do Dresden Files, but there's so much in Harry's head. The original one that was done by Sci-Fi was done I actually liked it, but there's a lot of stuff you're going to lose in that thing, lose in the transition. But it's hard to translate a book to maybe a TV series or a long format. You could maybe do it, but it's hard to do it to a movie because there's just not enough time.
I think in a TV series, people are more forgiving of just things happening and the inner monologue voice going on. A lot of that happened in the Sci-Fi series. I like what they did with Bob. I hate what they did with Murphy.
They flipped Murphy
Dresden
in the
just
reporter.
kind of pisses me off, the TV series, but I love it. And what was the actor's name? The one who played Harry Dresden?
I know who it is. It's
Blackthorne.
Blackthorne. That's one. Paul Blackthorne.
Paul Blackthorne. He's great, and he's pretty much great in everything. Not great enough that I can sit through the Arrowverse stuff on.
Can't
CW.
do it. No.
But know, Paul Blackthorne is pretty awesome. Let's see, what was I thinking? We haven't heard from Skep for a bit. Do you want to defend Tolkien's honor at some point, or?
Oh no!
Drop that.
He
Challenge
does not.
Skep
He
to a
does not.
duel?
He doesn't need me to defend his honor. He's got a pretty significant reputation, and
Yeah.
I don't,
Yeah. You think his legacy is safe?
Well,
Okay.
well, look. Since you asked for a comment, I'll give you a comment about that. Peter Jackson had to make a movie that people were investing a boatload of money with him, and they wanted something that it's got to have enough Tolkien, it's got to be faithful enough, but it cannot wallow the way that Tolkien's prose tends to wallow.
Mhm.
Now, those of us who like Tolkien's prose, like that florid, old-timey prose, we love that stuff. I love the endless descriptions and the poetry and stuff like that. I understand what Bombadil was, because I understand the context of of the legendarium that Tolkien was creating. It's much, much larger. I mean, the story of Lord of the Rings is just one. It's kind of one small tale. It's extremely popular, but it's one small tale of a different world that existed and was supposed to feel like it was told from fables, from oral tradition type, passing down the stories type of thing. That was the way it was supposed to feel. One of the stories was this battle. This was one of 4 major wars in the legendarium. I mean, it's much, much larger than that. Bombadil is an interesting character. He has a different role in other parts of the legendarium that you understand who he is much better in terms of what he is in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. If you're familiar with the Silmarillion and some of the other books that support the legendarium. But without that context, yeah, he can seem like, what the hell is this weird guy with a funny hat and yellow boots, walking around some enchanted forest? Why do they have to go through that, almost get killed by these ghosts? Well, you don't realize that, those ghosts are powerful warriors that you can go read about how they fought each other and had this amazing battle in some other part of the legendarium, and you see those were the ghosts who were the actual Barrow Wights who attacked the hobbits, and Bombadil had to come and bail them out. So and the business in the Old Forest, how the Old Forest, developed, all that stuff that has context that is descended from voluminous writings in other parts of the legendarium. So given that context, if you enjoy that, and I do, it's there for you to enjoy. I can see how coming in cold and just reading the Lord of the Rings, you might think, wow, Bombadil seems like a very strange, out of place character, seems like a totally forgettable part of the story that you can do without. Jackson had to make something that was exciting. He had to basically make it an adventure film that would make people from about 12 years old to 30 years old very happy and spend money. And that's exactly what he did. That is what he produced. And in doing so, his art was to stay close to the actual story of Lord of the Rings, but he actual and in some places, I actually would agree with Quiz. I think he improved the writing. In some places, I never cared for the scouring of the Shire at the end of the thing. I thought that was a totally bolted on thing that Tolkien, as much as anything, wrote to fill out the rest of Return of the King before he could get to the appendices. So did Peter Jackson, and he just got rid of it. But Peter Jackson actually felt very bad about getting rid of Bombadil. He said he tried every way he could think of to include Bombadil in there. There was just no way that the thing was just going to be too damn long as it was. and there was no way to do that character justice. But anyway, just a few comments about what went on there.
Well,
So,
I mean,
if I defend his honor, then
no. I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about classics. Here I go with one of my big meta-narrative type things. Okay, here's a thought. Certain books, when they become classic enough, whether we're talking about Sherlock Holmes, Tolkien, Shakespeare, Le Morte d'Arthur, all of that type of stuff has been around. It's so iconic, and it's been around for such a long time. It would almost be stupid to think that with decades or even centuries of time, that you couldn't you couldn't improve it or put a new spin on it that was actually interesting. I don't think we have to be complete slaves to the original source material. As much as I respect the original source material, there have been really great things that have been built on these things. I mean, Arthurian stuff is amazing.
Absolutely. But contrast what Jackson did with Lord of the Rings with what he did with The Hobbit. Now, The Hobbit, a lot of people find that a very entertaining movie. To me, it's too far removed from what actually happened in The Hobbit, and the romantic stuff is invented, and the silliness of having a dwarf and an elf having a romance is just completely contradictory to everything in the Legendarium. So there's so many deal killers in that for me that I cannot even stand to think about those movies, much less view them. So that was where he went too far, in my opinion. The way he broke it and created, and in doing that, he created something new. The fact that it offends me because it uses too much material from The Hobbit, but then betrays it, doesn't mean that somebody else coming in cold can't enjoy it. Because it's at the end of the day, Peter Jackson is a very good movie maker, just in my opinion. I think you could certainly make that argument.
Absolutely.
Well, he certainly is technically very skilled. I mean, he's produced some bad movies, but then again, lots of great directors have produced bad movies.
Hey, now.
So as I was, sorry, what?
Dead Alive is a classic.
So I was talking about Arthur again, and I think that the more distance you get time-wise from the material, the more license is going to be taken. Something like, has anybody read The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley?
Oh yeah,
Because that's the Arthurian tales told from sort of the female character's perspective.
My friend devoured those books in high school. I tried so hard for her to read them, I couldn't get past it.
Well, they did a not a TV series. They did a miniseries of Mists of Avalon in the 90s, I believe.
Sure
I remember watching it. It was actually pretty good. I mean, nothing's going to be completely gospel to the books, but it was actually not too bad.
It sounds like the Mists of Avalon was your Gormenhaus trilogy, Sora, because that was the one that everybody recommended the Gormenhaus stuff to me, and I'm just like, no,
Gormenghast?
I hate this book. I hate it. It's like first 50 pages. I'm still in the damn shield room talking about the dust, and it's like no. It's one of the few books I've ever rage quit. I just couldn't take it.
I would say, one of the things that immediately came to mind when you started talking about things that have improved over time, there's a lot of people that don't realize that the myth of Midas, the golden touch of Midas, that at the near the end of that myth, when he touches his daughter, when he picks up his daughter absentmindedly and turns her to gold, that wasn't in the original myth. That was added in, I think it was like 1850 or something like that, in an anthology telling old Greek myths to children for like educational and edutainment purposes.
Let's scare the shit out of the children, shall we?
Yeah.
Mommy and Daddy may touch you and your dad. And
Let me tell you about Krampus.
That was added well after the myth was already established. So,
well, yeah, no, that definitely improved it.
So, does anybody have a hard stop tonight at the 2-hour mark?
I'm fine either way. I got nothing
I'm
to do.
stitching. We can keep
I'm happy
bitching.
to let this. I'm happy to let this go a little longer if you guys want to keep talking. So,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, feel free to
I
carry on
can-
for a bit.
I can talk about anything. I have a question though. I like the cover art of this one, but I've never taken the time to read it because I have a weird feeling it's one of those books. Has anyone ever read the Hyperion Cantos series
No.
by Dan Simmons?
I don't know. Can you link the cover?
Yes, I can do that.
I'm gonna say no because it doesn't sound at all familiar, but I want to see if I know the.
Let's see what chat says.
Oh my god, I know the
Yeah.
the style of
Yeah.
of, but I've never
Yeah.
definitely never read that.
Because I've always been like, that's interesting. But I haven't really gotten into any new.
Here's a topic. Who
Oh.
misses this style? Basically, the hand painted.
Oh yeah.
Beautiful fantasy and sci-fi covers of books.
Oh,
you
yeah.
mean
The
like
actually painted.
the Boris Vallejos, the Frank Frazettas.
Yeah, like they're gorgeous. They fit the grandeur of the story. They're not just like this minimalist cheap shit that a lot of publishers now send out.
I hate the. Let's just have a bunch of photoshopped like symbols and then like a cityscape and then the name of the book in some weird font and then the person's name and there's your cover. It's like, give me something.
I actually
Well,
have a friend that she works for a game company as a concept artist.
Mhm.
And she actually did one of her very first contract works was to do a drawing for a book. I think it was an author from Russia that was translating their Russian book into English and selling it in English.
Ooh, maybe I'll go with them.
Yes, and but her cover was really good, but it was very digital art.
Yeah.
I think what you'll find nowadays is that there's a combination of things that are happening when it comes to the non-prevalence of the extremely time-consumptive paintings for book covers anymore.
Mhm.
Is that a lot of those artists are unfortunately dead. Frank Frazetta is dead.
Yeah.
And the other one is that there was a lot of like the cultural shift around that sort of art and its presentation went from being, oh, this is a really cool fantasy book that people will that's meant to draw the eye and get people to pick up the book and read it, into, oh, that's just like van side panel art. Which is unfortunate, but it kind of is true.
And the thing is, it's sad. Because it is sad because, or you have the shittily done, or it's you can tell it's like one of those just, you get it off one of those mass photography sites where it's just like two people and they've like photoshopped stuff on them, or they've photoshopped a background, and it's kind of like, and then you kind of like read the description of the characters, and the characters on the front of the book don't match anything close to the description to what the picture of the people are.
I remember, and I think I have it somewhere, I shared it back when I used to use Facebook many years ago. On the same like bargain bin table at my local bookstore, the exact same stock photo art of like a lady, like a girl in a Regency dress. And I thought, initially I thought, oh, it's just they put the same book in two piles. No. Completely different books, both Regency romances, but different authors, different publishers, same stock photo as the cover. And I was like, whoops, somebody didn't double check, the book coming out at the same time. But but it's exactly the same thing. So they obviously took it from like a stock photo place, like you mentioned. But there's also for the new adult series, right? Yeah. Of a lot of new adult books has this one model guy with these lots of tattoos, which I don't even know if they're his tattoos or just generated on him, right? For because he's bad guy.
Yeah, bad boy. Yeah.
And it's like the same model for that for 3 different books.
It's like, guys, look this shit up before you do it.
So,
like,
a
that's so-
slight genre shift here. I don't know if you're acquainted with John D. MacDonald, who wrote, I guess, the Travis McGee books. He's an American writer, and he wrote a lot of what could be sort of like kind of detective fiction, pulp fiction sort of stuff. And a lot of his covers had, I can't remember the artist's first name, but McGinnis did a lot of the illustrations. I can't even imagine a John D. MacDonald book without a McGinnis illustration on the front of it. The two things are just sort of inexorably tied together in terms of just the flavor of the book. And those are all, I actually think McGinnis is an interesting artist in general outside of the books that the book covers that he did. But yeah, a lot of that sort of pulp stuff is a lot of fun because I mean, it's the Conan Doyle type thing, and there are a lot of parallels between the way MacDonald wrote and Conan Doyle, in terms of like, you know, he has sort of his Watson type character and so on and so forth. But it is a modern take on it, and I don't know if the word improve is the word I would use. I mean, you can improve on some of the old stories, but I think at a certain point, it's really just more an expansion or an homage. I don't think it's disrespectful to the original. If somebody made a fantastic movie based on the Divine Comedy or just, you know, Dante's Inferno, I'd be like, that would be a really cool movie, and I'd be totally okay with them changing stuff up a bit. Yeah, you know, I think it's long enough. It's been time. It's time.
Have you seen the movie about Dante's Inferno?
No, I've only read the book.
There's an animated one. It's based off of the video game, but it's, you know, the video game is based off of the book, which is, you know, that has the movie based off of it. They turn it into like an action horror hack and slash sort of thing.
I don't think that's faithful to the original book.
Yeah. No, I don't think it is either. But you know,
it's one of those things like there's certain covers of books become iconic with authors. Like you can, like without even reading his name, even though it's massively prominent even more so than the title of the book, you can pick out a James Patterson book at like 50 yards because they all look the same. And it's the same thing with like Dresden Files. There's similar thread there, and it's like I like the style of the Dresden Files ones more because it gives me an idea more than just like, let me put text on a cover and then let me make a weird image in the background. Whee! But yeah, it's just kind of sad because it's like it's one of those things like Kindle, the Amazon Kindle thing, as in the Kindle library, not the actual like Kindle device, because I think that actually helped. But it has kind of not destroyed. It's kind of reinvented writing because you have so many people who think that all they have to do is write a book, put it up on Amazon in just ebook format, and then just like hawk it out to like their fan base if they have an Instagram fan base. Although I don't know how they would, but like if they'll become some big author, and then they just
back to Chuck Tingle.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, it's changed a lot of the writing stuff because a lot of the covers are bad, like they're bad Photoshop jobs, or they're like the cartoony, like they're only show like the legs of the person, and it's kind of done in a cartoony kind of like comic strip way, and it's none of the covers are what like they're not these amazing like hand painted covers, or at the very least they're not interesting. And it's kind of like, well, that tells me what I need to know about your book, doesn't it?
I feel like we're starting to lose energy. It seems like it might be time to go. And as people start taking breaks because we're going a little long, does anybody have anything else they want to bring up before we go to our goodbyes?
Read more, damn it. That's all I got.
Well, reading is good for you. It exercises a part of your brain that's totally different from the more passive, audio visual stuff. It's, do it for your own sake. It's not. It. I don't know. After reading even pulp fiction, I just feel sharper.
It's
using
mental
that part
exercise.
of your imagination. Yeah.
It's mental exercise that you don't get when you're passively sitting in front of a YouTube video. It's a different set of muscles. I'm not saying either one is good or bad. I'm just saying it's a different set of muscles, and if you don't exercise them, they will get flabby. One thing I did want to add before we leave, Harry, is that
Please.
there is an in my opinion, underrated and underappreciated fantasy author by the name of David Eddings, who wrote 2 5-book series called The Belgariad and The Malorian, and the total of 10 books. And it's really worth reading as far as a clinic in how to build worlds, have interesting characters, and the characters are so interesting and fun to be with. You'll just want to pick up the book because it's like spending time with some of the most interesting friends you could ever have. He also used a lot of humor in his, even though what they're doing, typical saving the world type stuff. And it's sword and sorcery, but it's done with a humorous bent. And to a lesser extent, his Sparhawk novels are of a similar but different stripe. He was actually an English professor or a lecturer at I guess University of Washington, and had an interesting life. But he really hit it big with the Belgarian and the Malorian. He was kind of an early prototype of the fantasy author who hits it big. I guess it was in the 80s, mid 80s to early 90s that he was writing all these books. And anyway, it's really David Eddings is his name, and I recommend him. You might really enjoy it.
Oh, outstanding! I've heard the name, but I'm not really familiar with Eddings' work.
Yeah. It's great fun. Just start with the beginning of the Belgariad and read it through, and you'll likely want to read the Malorian and the rest of his stuff. It really is engaging writing, and you talk about a guy who is brilliant at his craft. He really is quite good.
All right. Well, anything else? And I'm sure we'll be doing one of these eventually. The thing is, I just don't know when. It's just whenever somebody needs a night off. And I really like doing these on Sunday. So, maybe it'll be 2 months from now. Maybe it'll be a year from now.
Yeah.
But anything you want to talk about tonight?
Well, Kyler just asked me one quick one. Wonder if one could convince some of the politically out-of-work comic book artists to do book covers. They do. They do do stuff like that. Ethan Van Sciver did all of the illustrations in Jordan B. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. There's any comic book artist, so long as they have a decent portfolio and a good resume, so to speak, can find work doing book covers or any sort of other illustrative work. The problem is, though, is that usually those jobs don't pay very well. You have to have a pretty high profile to get paid anything, even remotely what you're worth. So that's the downfalls of being an artist. But I'd like to expand on what Skep was saying there. What I use a lot of the time when I'm reading, and it's not limited to just actual prose on page, but also like audio books and audio dramas, things like that. I've got an entire CD book filled with radio dramas of The Shadow from I think it was the 60s, 50s or 60s. But whenever I have that on, I like to sit there and use that while I'm painting or anything like that to kind of get my own creative juices flowing, and using someone's descriptive word as inspiration for artistic expression, like drawing what I imagine I'm seeing with their words. There's a lot of useful things other than just say mental exercising your brain. There's lots of different ways you can exercise your brain.
Well, there are, and there's a quote I've been desperately trying to find for about the last 20 years. I remember William F. Buckley, who was an author of fiction as well as all the other political stuff he did. He once was talking about, and God, I cannot find the original quote, but he was talking about the novel as synthetic experience. Because everybody talks about the personal experience that people have. But a novel, as opposed to a movie, is a thing where you can experience something without actually physically experiencing it. Because it's so immersive, it gives you at least some amount of insight into the circumstances of the characters involved. So if you were to read, East of Eden, certainly you weren't alive during that period in that, place and time, but you would get a sense of what the lives of the people involved were like. Just as for example, and it's one of those things that I heard, and it rang true to me, and I've internalized it. I really do feel that this kind of synthetic experience allows a person to broaden their perspective well beyond what they would ever achieve if they only looked at the things that were directly available to them. Because we're only alive for so long. We only get so much time on this planet, and the fact that there is this thing that lets us understand and experience so much so easily in the comfort of our own homes, I think it's kind of foolish to let it go by. Because movies really are just a much more passive experience. Yes. I mean, I know there's exceptions. A movie like A Clockwork Orange is very challenging. But most movies really don't engage they're not as immersive as a book is. Just my opinion.
No, I can see that.
Yeah.
You gotta ask yourself what sort of engagement you want if your benchmark is A Clockwork Orange.
Well, I mean, for movies, something like A Clockwork Orange, that's a movie that people, the rooms full of people have discussions about. Still, it's a challenging movie. Sure. It's not an easy just sit there and go, and enjoy it kind of thing. It's a movie that really makes you think, and is shocking, and it's a difficult subject.
Yeah. If you say you go and enjoyed Clockwork Orange, I'm not getting anywhere near you, and I'm moving to another room.
I would sincerely hope there is no important female in your life if you did.
Yeah.
No, but the violence of all sorts in that movie is tough. That's not an easy movie to watch.
No, it's not.
And I'll say this too: the book is ridiculously hard to read. It's written in essentially its own language.
Yeah,
with no Rosetta Stone.
Yeah, well, that was very much on purpose.
Wait, I'm sorry. Which book are you talking?
Clockwork Orange.
Oh, Clockwork Orange. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's an extremely challenging book.
If you want another one that is hard to decode, there's a book called Stand on Zanzibar.
Okay. Just Google it. just go to the Wikipedia. I had to read that. I actually read that for an English course my senior year in high school.
It's not the Swashbuckler, is it?
No. Stand on Zanzibar is almost impossible to understand. There are theories about what it really means.
Good, in 1968. So this is exactly the time period that I'm talking about. Yeah. A dystopian new wave science fiction novel written by John Brunner and is first published in 1968. The book won a Hugo Award for Best Novel at the 27th World Science Fiction Convention in 1969, as well as a 1969 BSFA Award and the 1973 Pre-Tour Apollo Award, which I've never heard of. No, this sounds great.
Yep. It's very. I had to write a term paper on that. Anyway, I recommend
In college?
No, in high school. It was
High school.
actually one of my 2 senior papers.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, we
Anyway.
have. We should probably save some for the next time we do this. I've had a great time. I've really enjoyed this. I love talking about books, not necessarily all the time, but kind of as a special treat. So thank you all for being with me tonight. Thank you, chat. Actually, the level of engagement from chat I thought was really fantastic tonight. Really, thank you, chat. It was a really great show.
Thank you.
So with that, any final thoughts, or we're done?
Read, damn it.
Yeah.
And if you want something at all that's kind of funny, John Brunner wrote a lot of books, and he wrote porn. And that's all I got.
He wrote porn.
He wrote 2 porn books under other names.
Excellent.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
60s were a
in,
wild place.
I thought it was funny, but it's like
it's in the Wikipedia article.
it's
All right.
interesting as hell.
And with that, the zoo is closed. Good night, folks.
Good
Good night,
night.
everybody.